Trump's 9-day journey is starting to head towards the close.
This was a very significant trip, not so much for the actual events of the trip, but for the choices.
You see the reception when he came off of Air Force One in Saudi Arabia, and everybody was there to meet him. What he did in Israel, I thought, was incredibly moving. Then to meet with the Pope, I really have the full trifecta, but to meet with the Pope, I thought it was a beautiful trip, and I couldn't be more proud of him.
President Trump's son-in-law is willing to cooperate, we're told, as the FBI is reportedly looking into his meetings with Russian officials.
Kushner's lawyer said he has not been contacted by federal investigators.
Well, what you see here is the politicization of the FBI. There's no objectivity here.
I'm not sure that there's much of a story here other than it's a distraction from everything else that is going on.
You may have heard that things didn't exactly go the way I planned. But you know what? I'm doing okay. I won't lie, Chardonnay helped a little too. We were curious about the past presidential election of a man whose presidency would eventually end in disgrace with his impeachment for obstruction of justice.
And the fact that she brings up impeachment is kind of ironic since her husband was impeached for perjury.
I think she needs to spend more time in the woods because clearly she hasn't moved past the election. She hasn't moved past losing.
I said on air that he was going to, and I tried to peer pressure him.
Because he said no when he walked in this morning. He said absolutely not.
He was unclear yet because he was still waking up. He wasn't really sure.
Well, I can't wait to watch those.
That's right. And we're taking all your photos this morning, too, because it's Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, so send them into, we opened up a brand new Instagram account. We paid extra for this on this holiday weekend.
You have to pay for Instagram accounts?
For this one you did. It's called @ProudAmerican. That's the new Instagram account just for Proud American photos. Send us your photos. We'll share them on that account this morning.
It is. This is Memorial Day weekend. We're going to have a great weekend, but we're also remember everyone who paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Most importantly, absolutely. But we do want to start with a Fox News alert.
That's right. President Trump preparing to wrap up his first overseas trip.
The annual G7 summit in Italy is coming to a close, but he'll address the troops there in Italy before heading home.
That is where we find Chief White House correspondent John Roberts, who is live for us in Taormina, Italy, with more. Did I get that right, John? Is that how you say it?
Taormina.
Taormina, yeah, it's kind of like a fast tower and then the Mina. And I'll tell you what, Abby, you save me some frog legs, I'll bring you back some calamari from Sicily.
Deal, John, that is a good deal for me.
All right. The president is involved in his last G7 event. From here, he's going to go behind Mount Etna over to the Naval Air Station Sigonella, where he'll give a speech to the sailors and naval aviators there. I'm told that this will not be a speech specifically tailored to the military. He'll be talking about his trip and what he believes are the successes that he's achieved, going to places like Saudi Arabia and Israel, Brussels, and here at the G7 summit. Two real headlines coming out of the summit. First, on Russia, the president's advisors say that he is considering not relaxing sanctions on Russia, as some people had speculated he might do, but actually toughening up those sanctions until Russia fully implements a ceasefire in the Ukraine. The other headline out of here coming yesterday when his chief economic advisor Gary Cohn suggested that the president's thinking on the Paris Climate Accord is beginning to, quote, evolve. The president making an important decision this weekend as to whether or not he will withdraw the United States from that climate accord. According to Gary Cohn, his chief economic advisor, he's beginning to understand how important this agreement is to the European leaders that he's been talking to. When the president arrives back in the United States, he'll find himself embroiled right in the center of a brand new controversy. The Washington Post reporting today that Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn had a conversation with the Russian ambassador to the United States back in December, in which they allegedly asked to see if they could establish a secure back-channel line of communication with Russian officials. According to the New York Times, that was so Michael Flynn could talk to Russian generals in Moscow about Syria and some other military cooperation. There's also another story carried by Reuters that there are 3 previously undisclosed contacts between Jared Kushner and the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak. 2 of those were phone calls that occurred, according to these reports, in April and November. No response from the White House on this idea of creating a secure line of communication, but on the phone calls, Kushner's attorney Jamie Gorelick told Fox News, quote, Mr. Kushner participated in thousands of calls in this time period. He has no recollection of the calls described. We have asked Reuters, which is the news organization that carried that report, for the dates of such alleged calls so that we may look at it and respond, but we have not received such information. As to the establishment of a secure line of communication, it's also possible, Abby, Pete, and Clayton, that this is simply a disinformation campaign on the part of the Russian ambassador, because the notion that this occurred was picked up in a transmission from the ambassador to Moscow, and he probably knew that he was being listened into by the NSA at that time. So we'll see if they have some response to that today. We'll keep watching for you.
Thanks, John Roberts in Italy for us. Enjoy, and thank you so much for that great reporting there, John, as always. And meanwhile, as the Washington Post even points out in the same article, yes, this could be just misinformation, disinformation coming out of the Russian government in order to discredit the Trump administration.
And of course, so the Washington Post loves this headline, and whenever they can get Russia in at the top, of course they do, and they have. The Washington Post at 7 p.m. last night put this article out about supposed, the meeting that did occur between the Russian ambassador and Jared Kushner, but then all the accusations that must come with it, how it was an evidence of further proof of the Russian collusion and Russian interference.
Right, and once again, right, we don't know the source. We don't know where all of these leaks are coming from.
Because it came from a mysterious letter.
Right, of course. And of course, it's always leaked out on Friday evening before the mainstream media can spend the entire night focusing on Russia and these potential collusion. But here's the thing. I mean, I always go back to, what do the American people want to hear right now? What do they care about? This is at the end of, as we've been talking about, as John Roberts reported on, this really incredible trip that happened the last 9 days. I mean, he met with the 3 major religions of the world, talking about the biggest issues that we face, terrorism. Then in Israel, he's talking about how to deal with this conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And yet that is not, if you look at the news today, I don't see those headlines anywhere.
Well, and they're not even digging into whether or not this is common practice. According even to the Washington Post piece, it says this: it is common for senior advisors of a newly elected president to be in contact with foreign leaders and officials, but new administrations are generally cautious in their handling of interactions with Moscow.
See, this is what you have to do with these stories these days, with the new fake news media. You have to read down into paragraph 5 or 8 or 12 or 15, where they admit that their story is basically bunk, that it's based on a couple of new niblets that they've got from some anonymous source, but actually, oh, it's pretty common, or oh, it's pretty straightforward. Another tear out from this very same Washington Post story is that the Post was first alerted to this in mid-December to the meeting by an anonymous letter. So December, 6 months ago, which said, amongst other things, that Kushner had talked to Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, about setting up the communications channel.
So why are we hearing about this now, right? This is the end of May, and you're thinking, okay, well, this is the end of this trip. It's the night before the big Memorial Day weekend. This is the perfect way to change the narrative so we don't have to talk about the trip that, as I would say, many Americans want to hear about, and focus once again on Russia.
So you give it out on Friday, right, and then it's perfect for the weekend so that no one's working this weekend. So this is the story that then floats all the way until Tuesday, which is why President Trump was already tweeting from Italy earlier today. Of course, it's afternoon over there, but already tweeting saying we're taking on terrorism here at the G7, and we're also talking about him coming back to the United States and the reports that he's going to be setting up a war room back here in the United States in order to counteract the stories that are coming out about the Russian
this
collusion.
story, and we'll talk about that for sure. This story coming out at from the Washington Post, the same place that launched the first story about Russia when the plane was taking off to go to Saudi Arabia. I mean, they've bookended this as perfectly as they could. Well, of course, the failing New York Times has to get into it as well. But they actually did some justice to the story in 3 paragraphs down. This from the New York Times on the Kushner story. It's unclear who first proposed the communications channel, but the people familiar with the meeting said the idea was to have Mr. Flynn, who was to be the future national security advisor, speak directly with a senior military official in Moscow to discuss Syria and other security issues. And then another detail here, the communications channel, which everyone's up in arms about, was never set up.
Right. So we had Corey Lewandowski on the show earlier this morning asking him all about this. And he said, yeah, you have to read down to paragraph 160 before you get any of this information instead of focusing on the successful trip. How did the president handle it? Here's Corey's take.
I saw a president who is continuing to hold to his campaign promises. And when he went to NATO, he didn't back down. What he said was, it's time for other countries to pay their fair share, just like the original arrangement was in place for. And you know what? That takes guts to do. And what the mainstream media doesn't want to report is that under the previous administration, nations got a pass. They didn't have to pay their fair share. He went to Israel. He went to Saudi Arabia. He's now in Italy with the G7. This has been a phenomenal trip. By all accounts, the mainstream media continues to refuse to give him the credit which he deserves, which is showing that the Americans, once again, are the dominant force in the world, and reassuring our allies that we're going to stand with them to fight global terrorism.
Abby, I know you're fired up.
I was. Well, can I just read you one headline that came out a few days ago? Because I was trying to understand what was going on the Strip. And I'm really upset about this because as we've been talking about the clickbait, when there's a misleading title, you're like, oh, I want to know what's going on there. And then you read it and you're like, this has nothing to do with the title I read. This one says, Donald Trump's foreign trip is going smoothly. It won't last.
And that was
like 4 days ago.
From?
Chris Cillizza?
Oh, just some other network.
Yeah, fake news. Okay, got it. Great, wonderful. Keep it up, guys. American people
But you know what? How do they know it won't last? You could say, will it last? What does he need to do to keep that momentum? But just to definitively say it won't last, that is the problem with media today.
You know what happens when you repeat yourself, when you say liberal media, okay? The media is liberal. It's what it is. They're cheering against this president. That article is meant to smear him and tear him down, not report any new facts. So if you turn the channel, it's going to be Russia, 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 segment A. Segment B, Russia, Russia, Russia. Same with C and D. All Russia, all morning, because they want the smoke to be fired, even if they have no evidence.
So, Mr. President, welcome back from Italy. You'll be back in the United States, back in the swamp very soon.
Very, very soon. All right, I do want to bring you some other headlines this morning, starting with the Fox News alert. And ISIS just now claiming responsibility for the deadly attack on a bus carrying Coptic Christians in Egypt. Mass gunmen killing 29 people and wounding 24 others on Friday. Well, Egypt launching several airstrikes overnight in response, targeting camps in Libya, which Cairo says have been training the militants responsible for the attack. Well, Egypt has been under a state of emergency following 2 bombing attacks by ISIS on Coptic churches on Palm Sunday. And now to another Fox News alert. Raids are currently underway in Manchester in connection to the concert bombing that killed 22 people. British police are searching a house in connection to the attack and evacuating neighbors. Police also arresting 2 men at a separate house just hours ago. There are currently 11 suspects now in custody. And the raids coming as the UK Prime Minister lowers Britain's terror threat level from critical to severe. Meanwhile, Ariana Grande has announced that she's holding a benefit concert for the victims of the attack, saying on Twitter that she will return to England once she's able to confirm a date. But she's also facing some backlash for not visiting with the victims of the bombing, instead just flying back home to the United States, with the Queen of England even visiting those injured on Thursday. And those are some of your headlines. I can only imagine, though, I mean, how impacted you are if you're the artist on that stage and this happens. I mean, I'm sure it's
no, it's got to be terrible, but her statements also give away the fact that she doesn't understand the depth of the problem either. So.
Well, coming up here on the show, could Wisconsin become the first state to drug test people applying for Medicaid? Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker wants to make it happen. He's live with us next.
Plus, college snowflakes, they're at it again, demanding a professor's resignation because he won't participate in a boycott against white people. And the college president, his boss, is siding with the students?
This is not about you.
I'm talking. This is all about him.
On terms of white privilege. This is not a discussion. You have lost that one.
You said some racist. Can you apologize? I did not.
Okay. Stop telling people of color the useless. You're useless. Get the out.
Well, several months after Hillary Clinton lost the presidential election to Donald Trump, she's revealing in a new interview yet another excuse for her defeat, saying, quote, "What I was doing was working. I would have won had I not been subjected to the unprecedented attacks by Comey and the Russians, aided and abetted by the suppression of the vote, particularly in Wisconsin."
But was voter suppression in Wisconsin really the reason that Hillary Clinton lost? Let's ask Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, who joins us right now. Governor, good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you. First, I should just say prayers to all our Gold Star families. Thank you for their sacrifice, and most importantly, the sacrifice of their loved ones. But thanks for having me on.
It's a great message. We cannot forget that on this Memorial Day weekend. So just first, your thoughts off of that, the voter suppression, the reason why Hillary Clinton lost specifically in your home state.
Well, it's convenient that she says that now and didn't say anything about it last spring when she lost the Wisconsin primary to Bernie Sanders on the Democrat side. That's because in the primary, both Republican and Democrat primaries, we had the second largest turnout of any state in the nation, second only to New Hampshire, where obviously they've got a pretty big tradition of being first in the nation in terms of primary. Wisconsin was second behind them in terms of turnout, the biggest turnout we've had since the 1970s. And that's because people were excited about those campaigns, both on the left and on the right. Obviously, part of the reason she failed in Wisconsin in the fall was because people weren't excited about her campaign.
Well, of course, but are they blaming on voter ID? I mean, where did they come up with this idea that the vote was suppressed?
Well, it's just ridiculous. I mean, the idea that that everywhere else in society, almost in anything we do in life today, we have to show some sort of photo ID. We do it in Wisconsin. We provide it for free upon request. There's no way that people can't get access to a voter ID here in the state of Wisconsin. Again, it wasn't a problem in the spring when we had record turnout.
Right.
That's because people, both in the Republican and Democrat side, were excited. Apparently, they weren't excited about Hillary Clinton's campaign in the fall, and that's the reason she didn't win.
All right, Governor, I want to talk about Medicaid. Wisconsin is seeking to become the first state to drug test Medicaid applicants. The left calling this move racist. What do you say?
Well, I think it's ridiculous when people want to see people permanently dependent in the government. You know, our belief here in Wisconsin, we're good, decent people. We want to care for those in need in our community. But if they're able to work, we want to enable them to get in the workforce. I often like to say we need to have public assistance more like a trampoline to get people back up on their feet again, and less like a hammock. And unfortunately, the left in the past has wanted people permanently dependent in the government. We want to get them the tools to get back up and into the workforce. I've got the highest employment levels I've ever had in my state. I've got nearly record low unemployment rates in the state, 17-year low right now, close to the lowest we've ever had. And I've got one of the highest percentages of people in the workforce of any state in the nation. We're in the top 10. I need more people in the workforce, and we're saying if we get you healthy, meaning drug-free, and we get people who've got basic employability skills, I can find a job for anyone in the state who's able to work.
Governor, quickly, before I let you go, what's the mood like in Wisconsin about how things are going right now?
I'm sorry, the last part about that?
What's the mood in Wisconsin where you are about how things are going?
Oh, I mean, I think the right now I often say with what's happening with the president and all the attention out there that people here in this state judge actions greater than words, and we see the actions, the changes happening that put more power back into the states and more importantly in the hands of the people being a good one. And we see a state where, again, like I said, we've got record levels of employment here. We're excited about the future, but we want to make sure we get more people off the sidelines and into the game and back to work.
Governor Scott Walker. As a Minnesotan, I can say this time of year, Wisconsin, Minnesota, beautiful time to come visit. So there's your public service announcement.
It is.
It is.
15,000 lakes, not the Lake of Atlanta, 10,000, but 15,000 lakes,
Governor.
and they all have fish in. So
Governor, great to have you with us.
More Fox and Friends next.
Welcome back. Some quick headlines for you. In just a couple of hours, Secretary of Defense James Mattis will stand in front of hundreds of cadets celebrating the 219th graduation ceremony at West Point. He's delivering the commencement to nearly 1,000 students. The graduation begins at 10 o'clock Eastern. And new video just coming in showing First Lady Melania Trump on a walking tour of Taormina, Italy. Earlier this morning, she was joined by the spouses of the other G7 leaders. And in just a few hours, she will head back to Washington with President Trump, wrapping up their 9-day trip over there. Abby, Pete, out to you.
Thank you, Clayton. Well, New York City is celebrating Fleet Week with the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard.
So today we're enjoying their trip. We're helping them enjoy their trip by putting them through the Bone Frog Challenge. Joining us now is Navy SEAL and CEO of Bone Frog Challenge, Brian Carney. Brian, thanks for being here this morning.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about this obstacle course and the Bone Frog Challenge.
Yeah, Bone Frog is the world's only Navy SEAL obstacle course race. Obviously, you can see the obstacles behind us. This is just a small taste of it. Our next race is June 17th in Englishtown, New Jersey. It's selling out incredibly fast right now. If you guys want to get to it, go to bonefrogchallenge.com.
So we got Rick Regmuth going right now. In fact, he's wearing, he just told me he's wearing shorts, the same shorts he wore last year. They have mud from last year on them, his good luck shorts. Come on, Rick!
Right now they're going over the 7-foot wall.
Now, Rick doesn't want to disclose his age, but he told me that his age would be working against him.
I want to see safety. I'm pretty impressed.
I know, yeah, let's see how he's doing. I think his age means wisdom.
I mean,
and he will master this course. So tell us about the course.
So he's getting onto the obstacle called Stronghold right now. It's curved monkey bars to a rope going right down. He's about to go to our reverse
Not enough to have straight monkey bars. You got to have curved monkey bars.
Oh, and they swing too. So it just adds all these added effects.
Oh, Rick's like, come on. No. This looks like a reverse wall, right?
Exactly. We call it the reverse slant
wall. What's the best way to tackle it? I mean,
you got to swing your leg up, use momentum and your body weight to take you right over it.
Got it.
It's a lot more technique than effort.
And you said there's different tiers, hardest to the easiest. Which one is this? Is this?
This will be our sprint, shorter distance course.
Come on, Rick!
Come on, Rick. Keep it going, buddy.
Rick's tapping. flipping out.
This is the chopper. It's designed to be like helicopter blades on a chopper. You're swinging around on monkey bars, so they actually move, they oscillate.
You're not just hanging. You're
no, exactly. It's just
Pete doesn't want to admit it because he's doing it later in the show, but Pete said that he's nervous about doing this.
It's a helicopter, yeah.
He's doing great.
I'm looking at it.
Come on, Rick.
Oh, there we go. That away, Rick. Rick, I want to see the flip off this one. Rick doing a nice job. I got to say.
Straight to the 8th frame carbonate.
No flip. There's a flip. You should flip. You should flip, yeah. How do you feel about his technique, though? Okay, we're talking to a sailor over here critiquing. Rick, on the finish, we got to talk to you. Rick, how you feeling? I see you holding your quad there. What happened?
Remember when you were a kid and you would hurt yourself at times?
Yes.
You get hit by something like a ball or kicked?
Yep.
That wall over there is...
Gotcha.
Rick, I gotta say, I mean, we only see you in a suit, but you've been covering up this whole thing. I mean, you are really in shape.
No, I've been covering it up because I'm trying to cover it up. Because I'm in such bad shape.
Oh, look at this.
Oh, he gets a medal.
Thank you.
Rick,
everyone gets a medal. That's the point.
We know how much you've prepared because those shorts literally have mud from last year's mud challenge.
I haven't washed them.
I went to put them on in my office. I'm like, wait, that's the mud from last year.
What was the hardest part?
That inverted wall.
Yeah,
It's actually, honestly, most of this stuff is no joke.
Yeah.
This is, there's a lot of upper body.
Good luck, Pete.
I'm not excited about it. I'm not excited about it.
Yeah, good luck.
You got a lot of mud on your face. You got to go wash that.
Brian, thanks a lot.
I appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate it. All right, Clayton, into you. Oh, okay. Instead, no, we've got a Fox News alert. Brand new raids overnight in Manchester as the terror probe expands overseas. A live update next. Plus,
Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has an idea that millennials will really like socialism.
We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
Will that idea actually work?
oh, universal basic income sounds like socialism. And smoked gumbo, crawfish pizza, and fried alligator.
Yeah.
We're grilling Cajun style on the plaza, and I'm going there right now.
And welcome back to Fox and Friends on this Saturday morning. So President Trump tweeting from Italy this morning on this Paris Accord and what he's actually going to do. He was up this afternoon, of course, tweeting. He says, I will make my final decision on the Paris Climate Accords next week, keeping everyone in suspense like he likes to.
He loves to do that.
Of course, he's been in Europe at the G7, at NATO, talking with leaders, and it's a huge shift because President Trump wants to talk about radical Islamic terrorism and making sure that alliance faces it. They want to talk about climate change. Macron, Angela Merkel, and others, of course, they understand that there's a threat, but they want to talk about climate change. They've been trying to convince him to make sure the U.S. doesn't pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. A lot of his more conservative advisors, Steve Bannon, others in his base, he ran on backing out of that accord. So it'll be very interesting to see what he does next week and which side he lands on.
And the conversation that he was shifting, if you look at the itinerary, what they were going to discuss at the G7, climate, and of course, what he wanted to talk about was Islamist terrorism.
Yeah.
Can we change the conversation? And he did. He nudged them in that direction.
Very much so. And he's focused. He wants to focus on jobs here at home. That's the big tension. How much pressure regulations do you bring on U.S. businesses? And the Climate Accord does a lot of that. It's an international agreement that would put a lot of pressure on our domestic businesses.
A lot of that goes back to terror.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're back with a Fox News alert. The terror threat level in Britain now reduced from critical to severe as police evacuate a neighborhood amid raids.
And this means an attack is still highly likely, and the country should remain vigilant.
Ellison Barber joins us from D.C. with the latest on these Manchester raids. Good morning, Ellison.
Good morning. Police say they've arrested 13 people now, all accused of playing a role in the bombing that took the lives of 22 people. 11 others are reportedly in custody for questioning, all of it part of what police characterize as an active investigation that includes learning more about the background of the bomber, Salman Abedi. The 22-year-old dropped out of college in 2016. Friends say he returned from Libya days before the attack. Abedi's two brothers brothers and father are among those arrested. A British law enforcement official tells Fox News they've reached the outer edges of a network supporting Abedi. Here in the U.S., people visiting places like Las Vegas this holiday weekend can expect to see an increased police presence, as we often expect during these holiday weekends, but particularly because an ISIS propaganda video surfaced online last week calling on supporters to carry out lone wolf attacks using knives or trucks. The video showed images of places like Las Vegas, D.C., and New York. We've seen videos like this before, but police are reminding people to be vigilant. A spokesperson for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department told Fox News, quote, "Our city has been mentioned in similar videos and publications, but this most recent video should serve as a reminder to remain vigilant and to report any suspicious activity." Again, that video surfaced online before the attack in Manchester. It surfaced around May 18th. The video is over 40 minutes long and claims to show an ISIS fighter from America encouraging these attacks. Guys?
All right, Ellison Barber live for us in D.C. this morning. Thanks, Ellison.
Thank you, Ellison. All right, turning now to some other headlines we're following this morning, starting with a murder mystery in Florida after the body of an assistant U.S. prosecutor turns up dead on a Hollywood beach. Police investigating the death of 37-year-old Barrington Wisnat Jr. as a homicide. The federal prosecutor who worked on visa and passport fraud cases out of Miami leaves behind a wife and 3 children. And a judge appointed by President Obama dismissing a lawsuit against Hillary Clinton over the deaths of 2 Americans in Benghazi. Parents of Officer Sean Smith and CIA operative Tyrone Woods filing the wrongful death suit, saying that Clinton's private email server led to the terrorist attack.
When I saw Hillary Clinton at Sean's coffin ceremony just days later, she looked me squarely in the eye and told me a video was responsible. I blame Hillary Clinton personally for the death of my son. That's personally.
Well, the judge ruling Clinton's use of her private email was within the scope of her employment. 4 Americans died on that day. A professor verbally attacked by his own students over claims that he's racist.
I am not interested in debate. I am interested only in dialectic, which does mean I listen to you and you listen to me.
You don't care what terms you want to speak on.
So you're looking at student mobs at Evergreen State University in Washington State demanding that he resign after he refused to take part in a, quote, day of absence event where all white people leave campus to provide a safe space for minorities. That professor, Ben Weinstein, telling Tucker Carlson the school is siding with the students.
I believe Dr. Bridges is answering a set of demands put forward by the protesters. And they have said that if he does not accept their demands, that there will be violence.
Well, the students will not be disciplined, but police have told Weinstein that he is not safe on campus. He's now been forced to teach his course at a public park. And everything we have been told about salt, it could be all wrong.
Leo, I see salt and pepper. Is there a salt substitute?
I'll get it.
Well, no need for that salt substitute anymore. That's because a top cardiovascular research scientist now says that eating too much salt will not kill you. In fact, he says too little will make you gain weight, reduce your sex drive, and increase the risk of diabetes. That is some good news as I toss it outside to grilling with Clayton and Pete. Guys, what's up?
That's right. Thanks to the salt, our sex drive is on overdrive this morning. Well, this weekend is the unofficial start to summer and the perfect time to fire up those grills.
That's right. And this morning we're having a Louisiana barbecue, just the right kind. And just in time for our Memorial Day, our next guests are donating their grills to veterans. Very cool.
Yeah, joining us now with their grills is Nick Aquan of Blaze Grills. Welcome.
Great. Thank you all for having us.
Nice to see you, Nick.
We appreciate it.
Okay, so where are we starting first? We're going to start with some smoked gumbo. What's the secret to that? And tell us about these grills. They look amazing.
They're awesome. You know, we got a lot of different stuff out here for you to take a look at. This particular piece is what they call a Kamado grill, and extremely high temperatures for searing, but also great for smoking. What we'll do is we'll let you take a look.
Whoa. So that's the... What's in there? That's the smoked gumbo?
Andouille sausage. It's got chicken. It's got all kinds of Louisiana Cajun seasoning. And when you work it in with this smoker, working the smoke into it,
Delicious.
All right, let's check. What do we got here on this grill?
Is this frog legs? Frog legs.
And look at that beautiful grill, by the way.
Well, we appreciate it. Typical Louisiana barbecue. We've got frog legs on our 32-inch grill and frying some alligator.
Which ones are these ready?
We got some that are ready here. Stay tuned.
Show me these. So these power burners here, and I love how they're lit up. So when you're out at night too, you got the LEDs and stuff. What's going on here? Tell us about that.
That's what they call SRL grill technology. Are you familiar with it?
I have never heard of that.
That's sexy red lights.
All right.
So, a lot of our product, you can get it portable on carts, but a lot of this stuff goes in outdoor kitchens, somewhat like you would see right here.
Show us some of the amenities down below. What do we got going on here?
You can do as much outdoors as you can indoors. You've got doors, drawers. All of our drawers have that soft close. Refrigeration, you don't have to go far for your cold beverage.
Yeah, oh, that's brilliant.
Cold drinks and such.
So do you buy that as a unit, or do you mix and match?
A lot of times, folks will totally customize it for their needs and desires in the backyard.
People like making the pizzas out here.
Well, you you can do regular pizza. If y'all want regular stuff, though, you got to get with the clowns from the other grill company. Cajun Boudin pizza. This is a pizza stone you can get as an accessory for our grill.
Oh, I love that.
Grill up the Boudin, head up with the pizza. It's the real deal. Boudin. Cajun crawfish Boudin.
Cajun crawfish Boudin. Look at this setup over here.
This is like a diner over here.
You know, we're going to be setting up as a street vendor here shortly, but that's a stainless steel griddle, and we're doing just some standard breakfast sandwiches: steak, Colby Jack cheese, bacon and eggs.
A standard breakfast sandwich in Louisiana? Because to me, that's
you know, we worried we might have got a little too extreme with y'all, so we backed off for a little bit on the breakfast sandwich.
And the standard breakfast frog legs going on.
Yeah, you just get one of those steaks and slap it between two pieces of bread.
Love it.
Right. Delicious.
Right.
Great stuff. Nickel Kwon, thank you so much. We're going to be eating some breakfast. Abby, send it back to you inside.
How come I get left out of the grilling segment? Bring me in some frog legs, you guys.
He
all
eats all the food.
Yeah, I know he does. Pete eats all the food here. Coming up, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has an idea that millennials will really like socialism.
We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
Well, retired Army Ranger Sean Parnell says that is the definition of out of touch. He's going to join us next. And a touching surprise for one mother. She helped her quadriplegic son earn his master's by going to every class with him. So the school gave her an honorary degree. That mother and her son, they are joining us with that heartwarming story. You do not want to miss it. That's next. We are back with a Fox News alert. ISIS now claiming responsibility for the deadly attack on a bus carrying Coptic Christians in Egypt, killing 29 people.
This following Egypt's overnight airstrike targeting camps in Libya, which Cairo says have been training the militants responsible for the attack. So what needs to be done to stop this terror group?
Here to react is retired U.S. Army Ranger and CEO of Branding Freedom, Sean Parnell. Sean, nice to see you this morning. To that question, what needs to be done to stop these guys?
Well, we need to kill them. We need to find them. We need to hunt them down, and we need to kill them. And I'm not trying to sound politically incorrect, but this is an enemy that's targeting the most vulnerable among us now, women and children and the elderly, and they will not stop until they kill as many people as humanly possible. There's no negotiating with somebody who's willing to blow themselves up to kill you. And what we need to do is make sure that we find them in their own countries and kill them before they kill us in ours. I know it's. I mean, I'm a warrior, Pete. So are you. You used to do this back in the day, but that's the only option in dealing with people like this.
Well, you take the attack in London or in the UK against teenage girls, and then you see an attack in Egypt against Christians. What does that tell us about this enemy that we face?
It tells us that they are attacking the most vulnerable among us. And anytime an artist like Katy Perry or Justin Timberlake comes out and says, well, we need to have open borders and we need to simply coexist, that is a true tragedy as well, because it puts a target on the back of every one of their fans. The Islamic State is now going to nightclubs and concerts to target our children. And these entertainers need to stand up to the threat just like everybody else in the world. And if they don't, it projects weakness and just encourages more attacks.
Right. So how do you encourage people to do that? To still go out and live their normal life, still go out to these concerts, go to the malls, do what you would do on a normal day?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't let jihadists change the way that we live our lives. You have to live it unafraid, but you also have to be aware that this threat is out there, and simply denying to the public that it doesn't exist doesn't help anybody, and actually just puts people in more danger.
The media is not even talking about this. We are, but no one else is.
29 people died in this attack.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's not part of their agenda. I mean, right now the media's agenda is to tear down President Trump in almost every single way. I mean, they're talking about whether Melania is holding his hand or not, and they're not talking about the gravest threat that we face in the country and in the world, and they're doing Americans a great disservice.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Sean Parnell, thanks for joining us on this Memorial Day weekend. I know you'll be thinking a lot about the brothers that we all left behind.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
Well, the left is hyping another bombshell report from the Washington Post claiming that Jared Kushner wanted secret communications with the Russians. But did they read the whole story?
And a horrible accident leaving a young man unable to walk and unable to finish school. So his mom stepped in to help. And what happened next? It will warm your heart. That mother and her son, they are both joining us live next.